started off as a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and now...
That's right. We are live.
The ghost faced himself, Brandon Tanev.
This isn't like the start of last season when it was just, it looked like the Canucks were just a beer league team not playing defense at all. And just before Chris goes, no, I'm kidding, Chris, you can actually go now.
no, hold on.
We have to give more time for coming on late. So.
I still had, hold on. All right. Chris, go, and then I got something else to say at the end.
So, an elf and a midget in 2 back-to-back games. Yeah, he's definitely on a friendship tour for sure.
Saying, oh yeah, I'm okay with him being, the 6'7" defenseman. No! He is a AHL defenseman right now.
Look, Shonky, don't mind Devin, okay? We all struggle with Devin, so you know.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Ships and Pucks podcast. We're live on Facebook.com, Twitter at Ships and Pucks, YouTube.com Ships and Pucks, as well as Facebook, YouTube. We are on the Area 51 Twitter, and that's probably why you're getting a echo. So let me click that there. That should calm my echo down. All right. And then you can, let me do that again. Welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com, Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com, Shifts and Pucks, Twitch.com, Shifts and Pucks. You can subscribe to wherever you get your audio. We're also on the Area 51 Sports Network. You can also watch us live on Twitter at the Area 51 Sports Network, as we are switching things up, of course, on Wednesday, as it is the Vancouver Canucks are hosting the Montreal Canadiens in a battle that will start at 7:52 Pacific time. We might get rant about that. Who knows? Of course, you can subscribe to wherever you get your audio. As we have Sean is here. Hello, Sean.
Hello, Kevin. How are you today?
I'm good. Just I'm feeling like there's an echo, but I think I'm doing okay. And Tyler's here. Hello, Tyler.
Hello, guys. Special welcome to Josh as well. Yes, it's still a bit disorienting to be on a Wednesday and then be looking forward to a game after the fact. But it's great to be back with you guys. And apologies for missing again here the last couple of weeks. Just a lot going on for me. But as our hockey season winds down here, I'll be looking forward to being on more often.
Well, we miss you. I know Devin said he did not miss you, but the fact of the matter is
that's fine. I mean, that's Devin's opinion.
He missed you so much that he came to Vancouver, and he's here this weekend to try to get a little bit closer to you. So
nice.
There we go. But our get from Point Shot Hockey covers the Whitecaps, covers the Canucks, the men of the people. Working the graveyard shift, starting at 9 o'clock, but getting some podcasts, working out in before he gets to work. Joshua Griffith is here with us as well. How are you doing?
I am doing great. I'm trying to cover that I'm not the one that's putting the feedback into the system here, but I think that you guys got it set up. So I'm just checking all my devices, and I'm like, okay. It's
probably me because I had a couple of things going on, so it was on my end. I'm pretty confident it was. So
I've muted everything. I'm really excited to join you guys at the Shifts and Pucks podcast to break down this Canucks and Montreal Canadiens preview.
Yes. So Canadians coming in on a roll. We'll get into them in a little bit here as they walked into Calgary. They beat Calgary in overtime. They walked into Edmonton. They beat Edmonton. Marty St. Louis, the guy has never coached in the NHL, has somehow found a way to get this team rolling again. We'll talk about them in a moment. But the Canucks have an outside chance at the playoffs, depending on how things are going. But so we'll have to see. We'll keep an eye on the lineup notes when they come out here. I don't see anything yet. Suspecting that Thatcher Demko will get the start and goal. It's probably suspect the same lines as everything. Yeah, so we're all laughing. It's like we're never going to see Halak again. Okay, yeah, never going to happen. Forget it.
Well, I guess we can get to that here in a second. But I don't know about that one. So some of the news that's come out today.
In regards to what?
Not waiving his no trade clause that was reported by Rick Dollywell today, and I believe Corey Hirsch had that as well. So we will see. I mean, Jaro Halak doesn't look like he's having much fun in a Canucks uniform these days, but if he's not going to just waive the no trade clause to go anywhere, it complicates things, to say the least.
Yeah, for sure. Because you can't play him. And I mean, the difficulty issue here too is you realistically have to give Demko at some point a break here. But that is an interesting dilemma. That is very fortunate that Demko is playing at a Vezina. Maybe even some could can I just toss in the possibility that even though he's not going to win because there are other goaltenders that are being considered, can I put Demko's name in the Hart conversation? Am I being ridiculous?
No, but there's so many names.
No,
Yeah,
you're not gonna get past the Toronto-based Matthews vote. So
yeah. There's a few. I mean, Makar, Ovechkin, McDavid, Matthews. I mean, there's a fairly big list of non-goalies there to consider. So,
yeah, but I guess my point is what Demko has done, and if they get into the playoffs, I mean, it's that's pretty. Considering how far back they came, I think you have to give him some consideration for something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Well, Kevin, I mean, if you're looking at a Vezina consideration for, I mean, we always have to think that it's voted on by the general managers, right? So it kind of always waters down the pool, whether on how good he's been or not, because, I mean, how much stat checking your general managers are doing, or how much watching of other teams they're doing, unless they're looking for a trade for that player or that team. And even then, like nobody's really like scouting Thatcher Demko, right? Like the Canucks aren't making a trade for him. So like it's a weird one with the Vezina vote. Like, and I really think they should move it to the media away from the general managers. But hey, we can only do what we have now. But I would agree. Thatcher Demko should be the name for some consideration for something.
Yeah.
You know what's hilarious though is I think we might actually see a goalie. Well, a goalie will be in the top 3 for the Hart, and he may not win. Yeah. He may not win the Vezina.
Shesterkin. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Like we went through that as Canucks fans back in the day with Luongo, because I remember there was that one year that he was like I think 2nd or 3rd in Hart voting, but didn't win the Vezina. Mm-hmm. And I think we might have another year like that.
It was all just because of games played, as opposed to what he did in the games that he was in. Right? Like it almost seems. Sorry, go ahead.
That and it's like as you said, Josh, with the GMs, they seem to lean more on like wins and shutouts as key sort of key factors, as opposed to going into like the save percentage and even more stuff, even more deep dive analytics and all that with goaltenders, because I know we talk Flames and Markstrom's right up there with all those shutouts. Like honestly, what's going to happen?
I think it is kind of fascinating, and there's a lot. The other issue with this too, it is marketability as well, because you got Matthews that's in a huge market in Toronto, and to be fair, I do think that it's fair that Matthews is in the Hart Trophy conversation. Like, I'm not disputing that he shouldn't be. I think he should be. Shesterkin, though, same thing, like big market, right? But I'm not saying he shouldn't be. I'll make an argument that McDavid shouldn't be. Do you know he's only had 1 home goal in 16 games?
I didn't know that, but that's the level of stats I don't pay close attention to.
Yeah, that's all. The Oilers have just absolutely dove into the gutter here in the past like 16 to 20 games. So I'm not thinking like when you think about it, I'm not surprised, but it is still a shocking stat.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what a lot of this is. I mean, it's a lot of it is marketing. It's a lot of getting your social media team involved and getting that campaign out there. So as well. So to me, the most important trophy to win for an individual to me is the Conn Smythe, because that tells me that you won the Stanley Cup. So that's the one that I focus on. But I think it's fascinating to get the other ones. But other than Thatcher Demko, and the Canucks have played, actually the Canucks have played, they've had their spurts. We've seen the ups and downs, but overall, I think that it's hard not to say that they haven't played, they've played well. Who other than Thatcher Demko has been impressive, though?
JT Miller is or sorry, are we talking goalies or Canucks players?
Canucks players. On the Canucks, specifically.
JT Miller, as an obvious one. They're not star players, and they're not going to get a lot of attention. But I think people should overall be happy with the contributions they've had from Brad Hunt and from Kyle Burrows. And we've talked a little bit about Luke Shen here. I mean, we've always been nervous since the start of the year about defense, and I mean those guys are not going to be able to carry you through 82 games, but they've been chipping in and helping, and that's good. They so badly need that. But with the big name players, I mean, outside of JT Miller, it's not impressed. It's more feeling underwhelmed, I think, for me, anyways.
Do you know who's second in 5-on-5 points for the Canucks since Bruce Boudreau took over?
No,
Tanner Pearson.
Yeah, Tanner Pearson.
Yeah,
he's been fantastic since Bruce Boudreau took over, and I know he's a lightning rod for people, especially the ones who are hyper focused on the cap management and making sure that all these contracts that the Canucks do keep going forwards are going to be good and efficient within the cap. I've not liked the hyper criticism of Tanner Pearson. I think he's worth the contract that they signed him to, and I think he's proven it. I think he's a great middle six forward in terms of what he brings, grit, what he brings, the ability to score and the ability to grind it out. I think he's the type of player you want in your middle six. The issue is there are other bigger issues in this team than it is Tanner Pearson.
Mm-hmm. I guess we should give our regards to Juho Lammikko as well. It has just been a revelation ever since Bruce Boudreau put that line together with him and Highmore. And you got to find something out of these lesser known players, and that's been certainly helping the Canucks with their success here in more recent times.
And especially with Juho Lammikko being in the trade with Ole Ulevi and him getting released on waivers by the Florida Panthers and getting picked up by Detroit. So it's almost found money with him.
Yeah, he's been good. That whole line, I really like that Motte Lammikko Highmore line. Pettersson, I think, also deserves some credit because I think he's back. I think he's been really strong. I think Brock Besser has been really strong as well, for the most part. I mean, I don't think he's the one-trick pony that a certain co-host on this podcast has mentioned, Kevin. But Petey is finding his game, and that's good. I think he's starting to get to that level that we know that Pettersson's at. So I guess the next question would be: Are the Canucks past the coach bump?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
They had that like absolutely torrid start, and then it came, and then they had that dip, and that was when you saw bad habits or old habits creeping back into their game, and then they're starting to climb back out of it. I think they're over it.
Everyone's
Josh?
on page.
Well, no, I'll let Tyler go ahead because I'm gonna disagree here with this one. because I don't think the coach bump is over yet. So
Yeah,
I want to hear what Tyler has to say, and then I'll try.
Okay. I'm the same as Sean. I think once you hit kind of a rough patch after that initial bump of a bunch of wins, or at least collecting points in every game as they were for quite a while there, then yeah, I think I would say that the bump is over. But at least they didn't regress back to the point of where they were playing when they didn't make the coaching change. So it's still a success.
So I'll chime in now with why I completely disagree with both of you, because I think the coach bump is going to continue for the rest of the season. Whether it gets them into the playoffs, that's yet to be seen. But just the little things with Bruce Boudreau and the drills that he's doing, at practice, and some of the practices he's putting in with talking to his players after the games, doing the belt ceremonies after wins at home, and just kind of bringing on a new feel to the Canucks organization and a new feel to the locker room. I really think that the bump's going to continue, but my doubts will come whether or not the Canucks players can continue to put up the numbers that they're doing right now, because it's really not sustainable. But I don't think it's going to ever come down to the coach's Bruce Boudreau bump not being there, because I think it's going to be there for the rest of the season, regardless of how they play, of what their record says. I think there's just little things that he's going to integrate into the organization that we're going to see for, a couple more years. And I'd like to see a contract extension for him, but we'll have to wait and see for that one.
I think what I would say to that is, I think with Travis Green and everything that happened, Jim Benning and everything that happened before that, I don't think we saw the real Canucks. I think we saw a very confused Canucks team.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Boudreau came, it felt like the light came on in the room and everything was fantastic. And then there was a little bit of that curve, but then all of us, I think now we are seeing the real Canucks. And I think where I do agree with you is the team will continue to grow under Bruce Boudreau. I think that's true. I think that will happen. But I don't think that they're striving off the fresh air of that coach bump anymore. I think Bruce Boudreau has established what it is in the dressing room that he expects. And I think I think I would agree with anyone that is saying that there's still a bit of a struggle in terms of some things, but in terms of what is expected. But I think overall, I think they're past that and into sort of, I think we're seeing for the most part what the Canucks we expected to be this year, fighting for a playoff spot. Questionable the defense questioned because of the roster on defense. Demko getting the type of goaltender we're getting from Demko. Pettersson being productive. I think we're now seeing the real Canucks, if that makes sense.
No, and it does, but I'm curious, Kevin. Do you feel like the Bruce Boudreau bump, because you just speak of it like it's just the number and the record that the team's getting, but I almost feel like it's more than that. Like it's a little like extra. It's some locker room something. It's moving the team along for future success kind of deal. But it seems like if you were to ask me, like if you were to rephrase the question and say, is the Bruce Boudreau bump done for the record? Are they going to like middle back out to a 500 record? I would say, yeah, probably yes. But I guess I'm misinterpreting the Bruce Boudreau bump, because I really think he's done so much more for the locker room than just the record reflects.
I think it's pretty simple to say that he's put the swag back in the team.
Yeah.
I agree.
And that's so important, right? But as far as like the quality of the team, I mean, they're too reliant on Thatcher Demko, and when he hasn't played, they suck, right? So, and then sorry, Yarrow Halak. I mean, I know that sounds like finger pointing. I mean, I think one thing that doesn't get pointed out that hasn't been fair to him is the last couple of times he started has been on the second game of a back-to-back, and so you're already kind of disadvantaging the backup goalie when you do that, because you've got a tired team in front of you. But right now it feels like they got no chance if Thatcher Demko's not in goal, and that's not going to be a formula for any playoff success. I don't think if they can even get there. So while it's exciting that they're getting some wins and moving up the standings, I mean there's still some pretty big flaws there that are being covered up by the goalie.
I think it depends on how you ask the question, and I think Josh talked about it. The Boudreau bump is not over. The new coach bump is, in my opinion.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
The bump that you get from a new coach, you always get a little bit because you get players refocusing. Doesn't matter who the coach is. Doesn't matter if it's Boudreau or Jamie Woodcroft or whatever. You get that little bit of a bump, but what Boudreau's done here, and he's created a new locker room identity and a team identity and a new just culture within the organization, along with Rutherford, Alvin, and all those hires. There's an excitement around this team. As you said, there's a swagger around this team. There's an excitement. There's a feeling. There's a feeling of belief again, and I think that's definitely a huge thing about from that. That Boudreau's done a huge part in that. Has a huge part in that. And like Josh, everything you said, I think is very true.
I agree with that. Yep.
Yeah. But like I said, I think the new coach bump is over, but the Boudreau bump is not. And that is something that can continue to grow and continue to build going into next season and beyond. Because they do, if I remember correctly, he does have an option. The team does have an option to pick up on Boudreau for next season. And at this point, I have no reason to believe why they wouldn't pick up that option.
And there's also little things like when you saw, I'm sure you gentlemen saw the pictures of him sitting and chatting with JT Miller, and media was pushing it out like crazy, saying like, what are these guys talking about? And Bruce Boudreau would just, like, oh, we just wanted to chat, and he didn't want to chat in the dressing room. So but little thing, did we ever see that with Travis Green? So it's like, it's not the new coach bump. Yeah, it's the Bruce Boudreau bump. I love that.
Yeah, maybe to rephrase that. I mean, you look at what's happened to focus, just to look at the Oilers here. I mean, they had Jay Woodcroft. They got off to that start. They got that new coach bump that happens, and then the Oilers are kind of back into what we've known the Oilers to be the last little bit here. With Boudreau, I think just from the way he started that press conference when someone asked him about the penalty kill, and I want to say it was Thomas Drance, and it was Boudreau. He said, "Yeah, it's awful," but just the way he just had some fun with the question. Like, there wasn't that. It was refreshing, and it wasn't that testiness that we were getting for the last really little year and a half, even with Benning and with Travis Green and sort of that coach feud. It was Boudreau started to have some fun. He added some personality. He continues to add that there. And I think it's allowed him to probably drop some F-bombs at times when it's needed to happen. He's also been able to challenge his team because he's been fair and kind to his team. I mean, you look back at even the penalty kill comment. It says someone wanted to come in and kill penalties. It's just he brought in a different atmosphere. And just at this point, I also, because I think that this guy should not be forgotten in this, Stan Smeal's presence in that press conference after Green and Benning left, I still think was a poignant moment in the Canucks year. Just to talk about the pride in that jersey. And we talk about whatever jersey that they're wearing, whether it's this one or this one or any of the other ones that they have, just getting that pride back. I mean, look, Kirk McLean is out on Twitter taking pictures with Pat Quinn in front of Rogers Arena tonight. So it's a different atmosphere around the team. We're not hearing the over criticism of every little detail that's happened. I mean, like, look, Nick Dowd scored the winning goal for Washington last night. There were times on Canucks Twitter would have exploded I've at times with it when that would have happened before. So like when ex-Canucks do well, it just doesn't seem to have that explosion in the market. There seems to be a calming presence.
Yeah, all that's still there, but yeah, I think part of it is that they are winning too.
Yeah.
Canucks are winning right now. It's either exciting to watch or dreadful to watch. You don't know exactly what you're gonna get, but for the most part, it's been exciting and fun to watch the Canucks play hockey the last 2-3 months, and that's been different from you go in from the last season and then all the way up until the coaching and management change. It was dreadful to watch, and I think that's been part of it. And I think there's also been because of that, there's been a change in what fans are wanting. I think you are starting to see fans be more are starting to be a little more positive, are starting to, like, there are still the fans who are still fully on board with making big trades and wanting to reshape this roster, which will happen. I don't think anyone watching this team is going to say, like, going into next season, we're going to have a very similar roster going in, or not at least one or two big changes coming. I think we all know that's going to happen.
Yeah,
but
the only way that doesn't happen is if they win a playoff round. And even then, I mean, you should probably still, long-term view, make changes, but that would certainly, create a temptation in management's thinking to keep it together. But it's one step at a time. Long way to go.
Even in then, I think it's just you look at that, and in a cap world, there's only so much money that goes around, and you have to find a way to make it work and make your team better every year.
Yeah.
And you have to be aggressive. You can't be passive in this league and hope to win. You have to be aggressive. You have to be assertive. You have to be proactive and make moves. And I think that's kind of where a lot of fans were hoping was going to come from this management group. But I think because of all this winning under Bruce Boudreau, I think they're going to be there. There is a little more patience. They only have to make a decision on one player going in, really going into this trade deadline, and that's Tyler Motte. All the other ones can be saved till the offseason. And there are arguments pro and against doing that, but I personally don't think they're gonna lose too much value, if any value at all, by waiting. And the longer this team stays competitive in the playoff race and continues to slowly climb the standings, they're gonna. I think that I think patience is a virtue here for the management team and the fans.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's I mean, maybe I guess this leads then to some other questions, and the one name that we didn't discuss in the people we were impressed, and I'm not saying he hasn't impressed, but Bo Horvat's name didn't come up. I think he's been getting a little bit of criticism about his role. And the fact that you wear a C in a Canadian market, I think that there's some automatic criticism that comes with that no matter what, especially in this market. But I'm going to ask, it, and then I think we can probably go through this, Joshua, even and re-ask this again. Is Bo Horvat getting unfair criticism?
Absolutely. That's what I feel. He's the captain of the Vancouver Canucks. He's doing a great job on the ice. He's not putting up, worldly numbers, but has he ever put up worldly numbers? He's not one of those players that comes in and is scoring a point a game. He's a guy who's winning face-offs every time. He's doing the little things. A lot of, people have talked about, well, he's not the raw guy, but that doesn't matter. You don't need to be the raw guy to be the captain in the locker room. You don't need to be that raw guy to be the captain on the ice. You just need to be the captain on the ice. And he has done that for years. And I have no problem with what he's doing. Could he score a couple more points? Absolutely. I would love that. Could he go Bo Horvat against St. Louis? Yes, that would be great. But right now, what he's doing, I have no problem with it. I have no captain issues between him and JT Miller or between him and anyone else. I don't know if there was any other options besides JT Miller, but hey, JT Miller might be on his way out. So what do I know? No, I have no problems with Bo Horvat as the captain of the Vancouver Canucks right now. I think he's doing great. Keep it up, Bo.
Yeah, your point at the beginning there about him not filling the net. I mean, that's really all there is to remember in this discussion, is that the guy was not given the captaincy to carry the team offensively, like we've seen with a number of other players. And we've talked about this offline amongst the Shifts and Pucks podcast regular group here, but I don't know where things changed. I don't know if it's purely McDavid or if it's because Sidney Crosby is a bit of a unicorn and has had so much success wearing the C and wearing all the expectations and still being so clutch and still putting up big numbers. But I mean, there's far fewer examples of the Crosby type of captaincy working than some of the alternatives, right? And we're not saying, Sean Horkoff here as the Edmonton Oilers captain, with all due respect, or some other examples where it's a third or fourth liner. I mean, Bo Horvat's a top six forward, and he's a very steady player. So unless there is an issue inside the dressing room, which media people that have contacts like to put some scuttlebutt out there once in a while. But unless it's an issue internally, I don't even know why it's a discussion at all. I mean, Bo was a born and bred Canucks organization guy that they developed and groomed into the role. He earned the role through his service on the team. If you make a change now, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's really going to disrupt the chemistry of the team, I think. I'll use the example of the Sharks with Joe Pavelski. Joe Thornton stayed after he was no longer the captain, but that followed that 3-0 series collapse against the Kings. And I remember that quite distinctly. He's in the dressing room with his gear all on still, and he's got it seemed like 100 reporters swarming him. The guy looked absolutely devastated. And if people might want to say he was stripped of the C, maybe he didn't want to be the captain anymore. The fact he was still there afterwards and was very supportive of Joe Pavelski becoming the captain after him, don't think that was an issue internally. But when they didn't put a good offer together to re-sign Joe Pavelski and he left for Dallas, I mean, the Sharks really took a tailspin after that, and I think they ripped too much leadership out of that dressing room. I think that showed on the ice that it did become an issue behind the scenes. We've talked with the Canucks of the loss of Markstrom and Tanev and Stetcher and Tyler Toffoli was there briefly. I mean, those were all guys that I think had a really good presence, in terms of leadership on the team, and they all played very well. And then with them gone, I think, you can look at the on-ice results and say that translated. I don't see how there's anything to do with Bo Horvat that's been a negative on the team's play. He's not out there finger pointing. He's not out there. He never says anything controversial in the media. He's a steady two-way player. That's why he is the captain. That's the job. That's what he was drafted to do. That's the job he's been doing. That's the job he continues to do. And in the playoffs, he does step up and pick up the production and produce some clutch play. So I don't know. I mean, I guess the media doesn't have enough to talk about or something, or they've run out of people to finger point at. And now Bo's in the crosshairs. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I think part of it is that he's in a very similar situation to JT Miller in terms of contract. Both of them are UFAs at the end of next season. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of talk about JT Miller being traded out because of that. And then I think you have some media members just sort of going, why aren't we talking about Bo Horvat that way? Well, because he's the captain. He is he bleeds Canucks colors, whatever they are, whether they're blue and green, black and orange and yellow, or whatever, but he bleeds Canucks colors. And the whole idea, and when you have this conversation, you talk about there's a lot of people is like, well, you put the captaincy on your best player. Like that doesn't work. Like other than like the why that started to happen is because you had players like Crosby and Taves specifically. I think those are the two that came in as young players, they were named captains young and made it work. I think those are the exceptions to the rule.
But even with Taves, Sean, I mean, he was not the leading scorer on that team, right? I mean,
nope.
Yeah, he produced quality over quantity, but he's never been in some scoring race discussion.
Nope. But
and always a very good player defensively.
And I think you need to have multiple people and multiple personalities too. Go look back at the 2011 team for the Canucks.
Yeah,
they had two very quiet leaders. Well, I would say three very quiet leaders in the Sedins and Edler. Then you had a couple very brash and outspoken leaders in Kessler and Bieksa. Let alone you had Alex Burrows as well.
Yeah.
So I think you have to have that right combination. It's not one person that leads the team. You should have a leadership group.
I want to address the point about raw style of leadership. I mean, I don't know if this is just I don't know, like I've played a lot of sports and I don't, the raw thing is good when it's used once in a while. Right. So I don't know, like JT Miller is a very emotional guy, but up and down doesn't serve you well all the time. Raw is great once in a while, and we see some clips emerge here and there where teams want to show that off. But a guy that's doing that night in and night out, I mean, the guys are not going to listen anymore, especially if you're not having any success. You need that steady presence, I think.
Well, Tyler, I'll throw that out to you because I wrote a note down when you guys were just talking right there. Is just multiple personalities and multiple leadership roles, right? Yeah. So I always found that like sometimes we had that raw guy and he would throw out those speeches, but we weren't necessarily looking at him for leadership. And it seems like despite, JT Miller being the leading point getter for the Vancouver Canucks, he's got that leadership role, but he's not, he's that raw guy, but he's not necessarily that leadership role in another sense. Which I'm sure if like you said, you mentioned you played sports, you would kind of understand that too. And I'm sure anyone else who's listening would understand that fact too. Like sometimes there's multiple leaders, and you can get things and different things that you might need for a game from different people.
I mean, I just don't think on any team sport you look at your teammates and individually, you're looking for certain things for them to bring to the table. So for JT Miller, that's energy and scoring, and in other guys, that's good defensive play. And back in the day, toughness and guys to fight. And your goalie, that's obvious, stop the puck, but also, there's certain personality traits that you're hoping that they'll bring to the equation too. Like, it's easy to confuse sort of the tangibles with leadership, which is more of an intangible.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. And so I think people are having some trouble sort of distinguishing the two there with JT Miller, right? Like Bo really just sort of presents well as a leader, the comfort with the role, the way he projects in the media. And you say it's about being the captain on the ice. I mean, off the ice there are big obligations in terms of charity work and representing the team, and Bo has never failed in that regard. He's always been a great ambassador for the organization and for Vancouver.
Well, and let me just toss something, Tyler. As a referee, you can probably speak to this. There's a difference, I'm going to assume, of how Bo Horvat would approach a referee in a controversial call, and JT Miller in his emotional state approaches a referee in a controversial.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think if you won't get an answer out of current referees, but if you go post career and pick the brains of. Tim Peel's a retired referee, and he's pretty willing to share his feelings on players he had to referee when he was in the league. And absolutely, I think there's probably a pretty good. I would have to assume there's a pretty good level of respect amongst the refs for Bo because of the way he carries himself. Maybe fans want him to go ballistic more often on the referees, but if Bo were to take that approach, I think the message would be heard because it's not something he does all the time.
Yeah, and I also think, and I wonder if part of this conversation is also within this is we mix the captain of the team, the leader of the team, with the face of the franchise. And can I use Connor McDavid as an example of that? Because Connor McDavid is a marketable, talented face of the franchise, face of the league kind of guy. But I ask this question honestly: is he a captain? Is he the leader of a team, and is that something that needs to actually be developed?
Well, I mean, he is that when he's putting up big numbers every night and they're winning games. But when it's not that,
yeah,
is he steering the ship in the right direction? I mean, we're not inside the locker room. We're not insiders. We don't have contacts.
Yeah,
you have to be the fly on the wall or get an honest opinion out of somebody that is in the dressing room. But it wouldn't be a surprise to hear that not everybody's on board with whatever leadership he's providing.
Gentlemen, go ahead. Oh no, go ahead.
Okay, for me, I think it's also like in big markets, in very passionate markets, and in hockey, that's Canadian markets for the most part. You also have Minnesota and the Rangers and Philadelphia. And as well as others that I haven't mentioned that are also very diehard and very vocal about their hockey teams. You can't just be one person that speaks to the media and is doing that part of the leadership. I think there's a lot of times when I feel like McDavid's on an island in Edmonton in terms of that aspect. Like, you've got Draisaitl picking fights with media members, rightfully or wrongfully so, but you need to be able to you need to have someone else who can answer it and not be creating drama. And as much as JT Miller's been criticized for how emotional he is on the ice, off the ice he's been very calculated with what he says.
Yeah.
And I think I think between those two, I think you've got a decent sort of yin and yang, dark and light side kind of mix there, just like you had with back in 2011 with the Sedins, and then you got BX and Kessler type deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you have to have that, especially in tough markets like Vancouver, Edmonton. And even look at Toronto as well. They did put the C on Austin Matthews. They gave it to John Tavares, and then it allows the Stars to not have to have that weight on their shoulders that they have to be leading and then also be out in front of the cameras as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think we see with Connor's media conferences that when things are not going well and he's not scoring as much as he's used to, or whatever he expects for himself, or what other people say, it clearly weighs on him. You can see it in his body language that he's got a lot of weight on his shoulders. I mean, he's not going to turn around and say, I don't want to be the captain anymore. I don't expect that. But there's times where you have to look at it and say, maybe we've put too much on this guy's shoulders. It's already enough to be the best player in the game and the highest paid player, and to carry this team with scoring every night. Right? Like, do we need to add an additional layer of responsibility? I really like the setup in Colorado in particular. I mean, yes, Gabriel Landeskog came along before Nate McKinnon, so there's a seniority factor that exists there. But you have a good, decent player that's a well-rounded player that is well-spoken and calm. That's the captain. And yet the best player on the team, Nate McKinnon, is also part of the group wearing an A, doesn't have all of that other sort of expectation and pressure and weight on his shoulders if things are not going well. And I think it's served the Avalanche quite well.
Yeah, I think most successful sports teams have that core leadership. I mean, even you look back on I'll use a football example because that's been on our brain the last little bit, probably, with Russell Wilson. Old school Russell Wilson used to lead very quietly. He never talked about his legacy, but it was the whole team. That was the defense. It was Richard Sherman that led in a different way. Bobby Wagner led in a different way. Earl Thomas led in a different way. And you talked about the 2011 Canucks, same thing. Everybody led in a different way. I think that's what creates a successful team overall. It's not just one guy that has to tow this franchise on their back. It's everybody. I mean, even you. I mean, the Canadian women. I mean, Marie-Philippe Poulin is obviously the captain of that team, but there's a core that they have developed, and there's obviously a very high standard of core leadership that they've developed there, that allows some of the newer, younger players to come in and establish and understand that standard. So to me, it's about a core. It's not about one person.
Yeah.
No, and Kevin, you brought that up, and then before Sean mentioned his point there too, that was something I was going to bring up. So it was perfect that he talked about it with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, right? Like they're the two best players, arguably on the planet, but are they the captains of that team? And we don't have access to the locker rooms, and right now with everything that's going on with COVID, a lot of people and reporters don't have access to locker rooms. But I'm very curious because they don't seem like does Connor McDavid seem like a captain of a team to anyone? Like, you know, like when the question was asked originally, like we all kind of hesitated, and then we're like, oh well, it must be Connor McDavid. Well, is it really?
I mean, part of the hesitation is they made that call, and I think he only played like half a season. And yes, he was injured in his rookie year, but for a good portion of it. But so there's that. But yeah, I mean, if you subscribe to the theory that the best player that scores the most is your leader, then it's an easy answer. It's yes. But I mean, I think everybody can see I don't subscribe to that theory. And I just say, again, I would say over the course of time in the history of the sport, there's fewer examples of that leading team to success than the other approach of having somebody with the pure leadership of capabilities and qualities having the job, regardless of their scoring capabilities, right? And we've seen a lot of defensemen be captains. Of course, they're not filling the net; they're defensemen, and that often works quite well, because they don't have that same sort of pressure night in and night out to fill the net.
I think there's no way you're ripping that C off of Connor McDavid without having a massive like fallout.
No, it's only going to change if he either leaves or doesn't want to do the job anymore.
Yeah, but I think hindsight, in hindsight, I think you know who I would put the C on, and you would have waited and where he's at as a player, a person, everything right now, Darnell Nurse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nurse, and he is one of their A's, and so at least he's part of the group now. But yeah, Nurse is the guy. Nurse is the steadiest, calmest, toughest, you could say as well. Plays defense. It was drafted by them. Sort of checks a lot of the boxes for me.
Yeah, even in Calgary, like we had this conversation about Matthew Tkachuk. There's a lot of people that wanted Matthew Tkachuk to wear the C once Giordano was gone, but that doesn't Matthew Tkachuk doesn't have. I think Matthew Tkachuk has too much Nathan McKinnon and not enough Gabriel Landeskog to be captain. If that makes any sense, I think.
Is it just me though? Is there seemingly less noise about that with Chucky this year and? Being an audition now for potentially being the captain there if he's going to stick around long term?
I think that's part of the question. Is it because do you know he's sticking around long term, and if he's going to? We talked about this earlier. Like if you want to be captain, I feel like you have, and you're going to play hardball the way the Tkachuks do with contracts. I don't know, especially with you've got Daryl Sutter leading the way coaching wise. And you're trying to build something here that's kind of almost do or die with the Flames this year. I think if I'm Treliving and I'm the Flames, I'm telling you, if you want the captaincy, you cannot play hardball in this next contract negotiation. And I think it's because I think Ottawa is in a different position. I think they knew that's what Brady was. He is the leader of that group, but they're also growing. They're still ways away from getting anywhere near. So I think it's such a complicated issue in terms of what is a good captain. I think it's something that as fans, for the most part, we have no idea on what's going on and whether or not that it's fine. It's a good idea. who's a good captain and who isn't.
We also don't have any idea as to when these decisions are made, what influences the decision. I mean, how much is the owner involved, and how much are the other veteran players on the team, and how much say did they have at the time? How much is the coach? Every team probably does things quite a lot differently, right? I think we can conclude fairly safely in Buffalo that ownership had a lot of say when they decided to make Jack Eichel the captain, and there was probably very little say from inside the dressing room or amongst coaching and management, and that didn't pan out for them at all. I mean, they actually did strip the C, and it kind of just helped move him out of town. Sad to see that. Happy for him to be doing well in Vegas now, but that's an example where putting it on the best player clearly didn't work.
It's certainly it's interesting looking down there. I mean, there's so many interesting examples of how that works. But let's bridge into this though, because the two people we're talking about here are Miller and Horvat. As mentioned, both are unrestricted free agents in 2 years. We've heard the JT Miller rumors. There's been a lot of debate about JT Miller and what you do here. So, we'll start with Sean on this. Do you trade JT Miller and sign Horvat long-term, or do you trade Horvat and sign JT Miller long-term?
See, I don't like just a second here. Just a second here. Like
this is a hypothetical.
The Kevin Olenek approach to poll questions is to usually give everybody the neutral option and not have to pick a table here. Why can't they have them both long term?
I think that. Well, let me answer that. I think JT Miller might play a little bit of hardball. I think it's good. I do, with the cap the way it is. I don't know how easy it will be to have both. It's not impossible.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's easy either, but it's not. To me, it's not. You have to choose one or the other.
So, Kevin, what's the ceiling that you think that JT Miller is going to ask for a contract, for an extension?
Okay, someone's gonna throw a rock at me. I think he's gonna ask. I think he's gonna ask for not. I think he might be in the 8 or 9s.
No, I don't think that's outrageous for him to be asking that. No.
I mean, it all depends on what his season looks next year,
and also where the cap goes.
Yeah,
and where the cap is.
No, I mean, if you said like 10 plus, I'd maybe kind of.
No. I
what's the other question? The other question is there. What's the term?
Yeah,
like if he's asking for 6 to 7, 8 years, that's a no go. You definitely move on, and I'm pretty sure Bo will sign a very team friendly deal. But if it's 8, say it's 8 to 9 million, but it's only for 2 to 3 years, I think you find a way. I think you find a way to. You find a way to see if you can make that work. But I think part of me is. I put this question in there because I think it's a very interesting discussion to have cap wise. Because you know that JT Miller drives offense and produces points. But you also look at his underlying numbers, his possession numbers, and everything since Boudreau took over. They're not great. He's just he's producing. He's outproducing those possession numbers and everything like that 5-on-5. He's leading the Canucks in 5-on-5 points since Boudreau took over, but his expected goals percentage, according to Natural Stat Trick, is just had it here. Wow, it's 45%. Like that's not great. He's finding ways to produce despite the fact that he's not controlling the play as much as you would like from a top end player.
So just sorry to interrupt because I do have this question when you're talking about this. He is playing center now. Do you prefer him as a center, or do you prefer him as a winger?
It depends on what the roster makeup is. I think right now the Canucks are better with him at center.
I would say regardless of roster makeup, I feel he's way more engaged as a center, and he's great in the circle. So that's the choice for me. It's great that he can play the wing, but to me, he's a center.
I would completely agree. If you're going to have your centers as Bo Horvat, JT Miller, and Elias Pettersson, just for this year, disclaimer, we'll see what goes on moving forward. But yeah, no, I love him as a center.
And that's where I'm at in terms of like, I like this setup with that 1-2-3 punch down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes back to like what we said was unfair criticism, because every time those lines come out, depends on where. Because with the longest time, it was like Horvat's line was always listed first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, why is PD a second line center? No, stop it. Stop it.
What is it that Brendan Batchelor always says is I tweet the lines out as I see them.
Yeah, well, I mean, and should we fault Travis Green, because it started with Travis? Should we be mad at Travis Green that, you know, he wanted his captain out to start every game, his best face-off guy? No, we shouldn't be mad about that. So whoever's playing with Horvat is going to be on the line that's listed first on the tweet that has the lineup.
And you know what? And even contrary to that, we had the Tyler Motte line start that game. They scored the 11th second goal right in, but I'm sure the lines weren't listed as the Motte Lamico Highmore line as the first line. So,
well, I mean, if you get the Daryl Sutter answer, you know, the real just smart ass answer, he'll probably say, "I've got 4 number 1 lines." You know, I've heard pitchers in baseball say this too about a rotation, and you know, media and fans like to kind of slot everybody in 1 through 5. Well, I remember hearing, I think Marco Estrada saying, well, I think we have 5 number 1s in this rotation. So don't get too hung up on the order. They're all important.
Well, I think actually Calgary does have 3 number 1 lines, unfortunately.
Well, and look at how freaking well they're doing.
They're doing great,
right?
I know you guys are.
Jeez, shocked at that and where they're at in the standings.
I know you guys are a Calgary podcast too, and a Flames podcast too. So, but yeah, no, they're doing amazing, and their top line's probably the best line in National Hockey League.
It's a dream for a coach if you have the balance in your lineup. I mean, you know, the teams that win the Stanley Cup, usually they can roll all 4 out. They're not totally equal in ice time. Obviously, the guys that play on the power play units are going to have a higher TOI at the end of the game. But if you can roll out those 4 lines steady 5-on-5 on a fairly even basis, you got a really good shot at winning.
And that's why, right now, with the way the Canucks roster construction is, I like JT Miller as a center, because you are able to build out 3 lines with 3 very good centers. The whole point and why people were excited about the Jason Dickinson trade and signing was they thought that maybe he could be that. He could be a 3rd line center for the Canucks and start building out that way. But with the way things have worked out, I'm totally fine with having 3 deep, a 3-headed monster of Miller, Pettersson, and Horvat down the middle. But what I want to just get back to is the original question is, there's only so much money to go around, and I think you have to have that conversation. I honestly put it out there just to see where the conversation would go, not necessarily to come up with an answer, but see where the conversation would go. Because I honestly don't know what my answer would be. If it's a binary question, you have to keep one and trade the other. I think it also, a lot of it comes down to, sorry, Kev, just a lot of it comes down to where's Petey too. Mm-hmm. Can he drive a play, and can he hold on down the line, and can he drive play on his own? Because for most of his career, he's had JT Miller on the wing or taking faceoffs and shifting to the wing afterwards. And if Petey can come in, start winning more faceoffs than he's losing, control the play, and basically drive a line by himself. I mean, is there maybe that does open up a JT Miller trade chip as a way to balance things out and make the roster a little more just better within the cap and fill some holes that are dragging this team down?
Well, there's two things I think that are also playing into this. One, I think, I know what Rutherford says something different, but I think we could all agree that the defense needs at least some sort of reshaping. I think we all agree with that, right? I don't think there's any disagreement there. But the other question that I would have, and it's not a criticism, but I just want to know where they are going to be at. I would want to see where Podkolzin and Höglander are at as they come forth here. And you've got Höglander, by the way, RFA 23-24. So the same years that Horvat and Miller are going to be UFAs, and you're going to have to, Höglander's going to get a raise of some kind than what he's making. But where is he going to be at? Where is Podkolzin going to be at this point? And I guess that other question is where that leads me to is and why I asked that question. If you believe Miller is a center, how strong are you down the wings? And what are you going to end up paying? Because you're going to have to pay Besser. If you're qualifying Besser, there's probably a raise for Besser. We'll get to one other guy in a second. You've got Connor Garland for 4 years. There may be an option that you could trade him. If I had the decision between the two, I would keep Horvat and trade Miller. And the reason I would do it is because I think you can get a hell of a lot for Miller. I think it's a pretty term-friendly contract at this particular point. I think with Johnny Gaudreau on the market and Philip Forsberg on the market right now, I think that some teams may look at that and say, I'm going to pay 5 for JT Miller and I'm going to pay 9 for Johnny Gaudreau, 9-10 for Johnny Gaudreau. I might be more interested in paying 5 for JT Miller and offer a little bit more.
Well, and I think that's why there's so much scuttle around JT Miller for all the reasons you laid out there.
Yeah.
Sean,
going back to...
Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, no, I'm going to tangent this a little bit, so you go there, Josh.
No, because I was just going to hope that you said either one or the other so I could completely disagree and say neither. Because I don't think they're going to trade either Miller or Horvat. I think that Brock Besser is going to be the one that's on the trade market. I reached out to a couple people today, and that was the name that I was hearing. That Brock Besser is hot on the market right now. JT Miller's he's basically, the teams aren't going to give up what it costs to try and get him, and I don't think that Bo Horvat is a player that a lot of teams are calling on right now. They're kind of waiting and seeing, and he'll give the Canucks more of a team-friendly contract than they could get from somebody else. But I don't think it's going to be JT Miller or Bo Horvat. I think it's going to be somebody like a Brock Besser. Like I said, just hearing what's heating up in the market right now. But they have a lot more wing depth with Höglander and Podkolzin. I didn't even get to you guys skipped over me in the players to watch and the ones that impressed us.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay, but I can bring it back right now because I had Podkolzin on that. 10 goals, 6 assists, 16 points. He's 20th in rookie scoring. How much should we really expect from him? He's on an ELC. I think he's one of these, wingers that's going to move into the top 6. Pearson's already there. He's signed for a long-term deal. So I think that Brock Besser is going to be the one to watch come this trade deadline.
I have trouble. I'll start. Sorry. The host is a jerk, so just bear with him there. But I have look. I just think it is so damn hard in this league to find a lethal number 1 right-hand shot in this league. That is a tough trade Like, I mean, I'm sure you can get a lot for him. It's just that is a tough replacement of Brock Besser. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
It is. And Josh, that's actually where I was going too with Pod Coles, and I realized that we missed talking about him. He's been fantastic under Boudreau, and it's not necessarily just his offense. He's been doing little things, and even Höglander too. Like Boudreau's just frustrated. He's just been frustrated because he hasn't potted more goals and produced more points. If you look at the underlying possession stats and the expected goal stats on that, he's doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
And
so
and there's 2 top 6 wingers right there.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I'm still under the impression that I don't see a big move happening during this season.
Yeah,
but I'm warming to the idea that Besser is the one that will be moved out in the off season. The qualifying offer is a bit tough to take for the Canucks right now, especially with the cap crunch that they're in. And as you said, Kevin, he's a right shot guy who has the ability to put 25, 30 goals in every season, and honestly could be a consistent 30 goal scorer. He has that talent, especially if you put him with a more playmaking center,
Mm-hmm.
which he doesn't really have here in Vancouver.
Hey, imagine him on the second line of Carolina. Oh.
Mm-hmm. Like he needs someone who can distribute the puck a little bit better than Horvat's. More of he's a bull, right? He just drives the net. Petey's more cerebral. He can distribute, but he's a lot better as a trigger man as well. And Miller's sort of a hybrid as well. I think if you can find a way to get if Brock Besser was on a line with a really good, almost pure playmaker, watch out type deal. So I think there is opportunities to get a significant haul back for him, despite the qualifying offer and everything there. But I do think it's going to be a lot. It's going to be I think any major move that happens with the Canucks will be off season.
Yeah,
I think with Besser, it's as simple as he's more expendable than the other guys we've been talking about. If I had to guess at this moment, as JT Miller continues to do what he's been doing lately and pushing them higher up the standings in the process, not singularly, but obviously he's helping helping them get to where they want to go. I would like to think that ownership's already a big JT Miller fan, and management's probably going to become quite fond of the guy as well. And I think he's going to be part of the future. If I had to guess. I do.
That being said, when are they actually allowed to talk extension? Like officially?
Not till the off season.
The off season.
Like it has to be like July, right? Officially. I'm sure they can unofficially off the books talk.
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing I think you have to look at is what is JT Miller's ask, and are you able to lock him in long term in the off season, or maybe not even long term, but midterm? I think midterm makes more sense. Mm-hmm. A 3 to 4 year deal. Are you able to find a 3 to 4 year deal that makes sense for the Canucks? Because if you can, you sign him. If you can't, that's when. And that's why I think everything's going to happen in the offseason, because I think there's too much up in the air with, are you willing to sign him 6-7 years at a very big ticket? Because that's what he's going to command.
Yeah. And the thing here is, like, if the Canucks were on the decline from a fairly recent deep playoff run, say 3-4 years ago, and it's time to now do the fire sale, and that's clearly the only path forward. And what you're trying to recoup is picks and prospects. That's great, but if they're going to trade JT Miller, not only do they got to get a big haul back, but they need to get immediate NHL help. I mean, they are not in a regardless of what they say in the press. as far as ownership's concerned, if they don't make the playoffs this year, their goal is to be in the playoffs again next year. That's the type of ownership that we have, and with the Canucks, it's we want to compete every year.
Yeah,
Canadian
Francesco
market.
wants to tweet in the playoffs. That's
Yeah. So and you know, I don't know Francesco Aquilini. We can only go by his tweets, really, because he rarely even does media appearances. But you got to think that the type of player JT Miller is, and the excitement he brings to the arena every night is something that the owner is loath to part with.
okay. So can I just ask a question? This because this is just a tangent. But where are we on Connor Garland?
He's been good. I think you know, we're not disappointed with him. He's not the biggest guy. He's pesky on a team that lacks some bite. But if there's a deal to be made involving him, I don't think he's a must keep either.
I'd like to see more spins from Connor Garland. I think the spins per 60 have really gone down in the last, 10 or 15 games. But before that, I really liked him. I don't think his contract is something that we need to be like looking at moving right now.
Yeah.
I think he's fine. Figaro, Vancouver, really like the player, really like the personality. So unless you're, I guess, again, getting blown out of the water with a trade offer for him, then I'm okay with keeping him. His contract's okay.
I have less reluctance about that and what the return would be and how that alters the course of the franchise than I would with JT Miller. I think we spent a long time on this show talking about leadership and presence, and although we're satisfied with Bo Horvat as a captain, I mean, to lose JT Miller would be a big blow in that regard. And then who do you replace him with? Where does that production and where does that presence come from? There's not much in the cupboard right now. So yes, while they would want to bring back some future with JT Miller, I if you make a deal, I can't see fans being satisfied with the return under any circumstance. People are going to be disappointed whether it's not enough future or not enough present. I have more reluctance about making that move. That's a pretty big change to make. Whereas with Connor Garland, I don't think it's the same discussion.
I think there is, for whatever reason, he was acquired with a massive trade, right? So I think the expectations were unreasonably high for him. When you look at his season, you compare it to the last his career, he's right on par, honestly, with what he's done throughout his career in terms of creating goals, creating offense and offensive chances. He's just been, I feel like he's been a little bit snake bitten, especially since the Boudreau the coaching change. He hasn't produced at the offense since the coaching change, but he's still been a very effective player. And I think it's just give him more time. I think next season, watch out type deal.
Yeah, I've been a big Connor Garland fan. I like the contract. I like the player. He's been a bit snake bitten. Hasn't found necessarily the fit on the line. I was just curious. Looking at the time here, do we want to touch on Tyler Motte? I feel like that's a lengthy conversation, or do we want to jump in and touch on some other news in the NHL that might take a little bit less time?
I mean,
I'd love to be done by 7:30 Pacific time here, so we got 9 minutes.
We're getting close. We're getting close to time.
Yeah. I think the Motte conversation would be a little more in depth. So let's save that
for Monday.
We'll get Josh on in the future to talk about that as well too. So
absolutely, definitely. I'd love to jump back on that. That was an hour and what are we at? Like an hour and 15 minutes. That flew right by. So definitely have me on again.
Yeah. Well, let's quickly touch on a couple things, and then maybe Sean, when we're done this, we'll do the pig and do, because as just in terms of time here. But let's touch on the Canadiens. They're in the midst of that new coach bump with Marty St. Louis. They're winning a lot, but they're not going to make the playoffs. I think that they're where are we at? What are we thinking of the Canadiens? Just this is a coach bump. This was like a team that I think obviously overachieved when they went to the Stanley Cup final and had the tough situation with Shea Weber and Carey Price. Personally, I think their future is pretty bright, but I think they got a ways to go.
They need to find a way to find the goalie of the future. Need to find a way to find that number one defenseman of the future. We know they've got the center of the future in Nick Suzuki, but they need to fill out those other two key spots for me to really feel like they're on the right track.
Is it antiquated to say they're undersized? They're not big enough as a team, not rugged enough. That'd be a concern for me too. I think a little bit.
That's never been the Canadiens' way, though. They've never been that big, rugged team. They've always wanted to be that scoring team. But you're right. They're not. I don't think that they're big enough. I think that that's something they also have to address. I'm a big Jake Evans-ologist, though. I got to tell you, I think Jake Evans is a guy to watch out for in the future. And if they win that draft lottery, Nick Suzuki, Shane Wright, and Jake Evans up the middle is not terrible.
Yeah, like I said, I look at that. Is Alexander Romanov going to be a number one defenseman in this league? Who do they have outside of Carey Price that can be a starter? What can Kent Hughes do to almost undo what Mark Bergevin did with the amount of long-term contracts that they have on aging players?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Sean, you are probably going to future rant about what some team is going to do with Shea Weber.
Oh yeah, they're gonna long-term IR him. Of course they will.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. So,
oh, mute, Tyler. Mute.
I thought I had it on before. Anyways, cap circumvention and the cap recapture are the hills that Sean will die on, even though the Luongo cap recapture is about to go away fairly soon.
No, Tyler. The hill I will die on is that white jerseys need to go away.
Mm.
That's
I can live with that. I think that's a hill I could join you on.
That's what we get to see tonight with Montreal against the Canucks, right? White jerseys.
Yep.
I love those red jerseys, though. I wish they wore them on the road. Oh, man, I love those red jerseys.
This is a perfect matchup for them to do it too.
Yeah.
Blue versus red.
Yeah.
It'd be amazing.
Yeah. Josh, go ahead.
I have some thoughts on Montreal.
I was going to ask you.
A couple thoughts. Yeah. So, they've been on a tear, as everyone knows. They've gone 7-3 in their last 10 games. Andrew Hammond is ripping it up. Sam Montembeault ripping it up. It's not sustainable. They've got 7-3 and they're still the worst team in the NHL. Like, great. It's going to be fun tonight. Like, they've gotten ridiculous save percentage from their goalies. It's been like unreal. I think the stats since February 1st are like 933 or something like that between the two goaltenders. Like, they've led the National Hockey League in goaltending save percentage since February 1st. It's been fun. Great. Enjoy it, Habs. But yeah, trade deadline's coming. Half your players, Jeff Petrie, he's gone. Ben Sherratt, he's gone. Get rid of the rest of them. Yeah. I just hope because the Vancouver Canucks have the best shooting percentage since February 1st. So I hope that the immovable force versus unstoppable object kind of goes in the Canucks way, and we get a ton of goals tonight and not a lot of saves by the Habs. That's all I got to say on the Habs.
Fair enough. The last thing is the Seattle Kraken for 20 minutes and 32 seconds, I think, were the talk of the town in Seattle yesterday when Jared McCann signed the 5-year, $25 million contract. And then Russell Wilson said, hold my beer. And the Seattle Seesaw said, hold my beer. We're taking over. Anyway, but Jared McCann off the trade market. I think that there's probably a lot more to discuss with this when we talk Flames. I think in a contract comparison with Andre Mangiapane. But is this a good contract for the Kraken?
I on one hand, you see, he was a Canucks draft pick, and I kind of feel like they gave up on him a little soon. So I'm happy for Jared to get some security somewhere. At the same time, though, I mean, it's hard to discern what exactly Seattle's trying to do.
Yeah,
You're basically saying he's a cornerstone, and I don't know. I'm not trying to slag the guy, but I don't know about that one.
they have two more points than Montreal.
Someone has to score for Seattle, and he's got 20 this season. So I honestly I have no issues with it. Like there were other contracts that they signed in the off season that are very questionable, especially the amount of money and term they've sunk into their goaltending situation. But with McCann, I think someone has to score, and I think he's going to be a good person to have along with Matty Beniers next year. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's one of those signings that just I don't know. I think it makes sense for Seattle, but it's far from what they need to. We need the issue that is holding them back. They need more. They need to find more players like a Jared McCann.
Yeah, and they didn't get the goaltending that they were expecting. Like, flat out, Philip Grubauer has not been enough. Every time I've watched Philip Grubauer and watch a Kraken game, there's a goal that is allowed. Like, it's never good to allow a goal, but it's the worst possible time with the Kraken. It's like they're putting the pressure on. They're about to tie the game. The team goes back the other way and scores. It's like, well, there you go. Like it just and some of them are just bad goal. Like the goaltending has not been good enough in Seattle, but yeah, it's good that they're getting some cornerstone. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. Trade deadline and off season, because I think that will be very intriguing. But we will leave it here as we are. Well, that game may even start later in here in Vancouver, as there's 11:20 to go with the Caps and Oilers, and I have 2-2, but I think. Unless the Capitals just scored again, I'm not sure, but we'll leave it here. Joshua, tell us about Point Shot Hockey. How can people find that?
They can check it out on the Area 51 Sports Network, of course, or they can check it out on Twitter at Point Shot Hockey. They can follow myself, Sean, Bill, or Malcolm on all of our Twitter handles. If they don't already follow us, and yeah, we got lots of great stuff coming out. Some great guests lined up here, hopefully for trade deadline. So we're working on some things, but should be excited for the upcoming weeks.
Sean, the Pig and Duke.
Yeah, so we've partnered with the Pig and Duke pubs here in Calgary and are part of their Pick and Puck Club. They have 2 locations. The downtown location at 503 4th Ave Southwest, and the neighborhood pub at 1312 12th Ave Southwest. Members of the Pig and Puck Club can get game day specials when they go watch Flames and Canucks games at either location. Members are also able to enter draw for tickets to the April 23rd game at the Saddle Dome between the Flames and Canucks. I would suggest you go and have their one or two of their house beers. They've got their Pub Life beers. They have a lager and a copper beer that you can get. And the Shifts and Pucks podcast have 2 tickets to give away to that same game as part of the Pig and Puck Club. And you can enter them by retweeting any of our episodes, including this one, any of our pod clips that Kevin puts out there, as well as you can DM us the word of the week on Twitter or Facebook. Any retweet will gain you 1 entry, and any DM of the word of the week will gain you 3 entries. This week's word of the week, in celebration of my birthday and the shot that my brother Devin, host here on Shifts and Pucks, gave me on Saturday when I was at the Pig and Duke, Muff Dive. The word of the week is Muff Dive. We would like to thank Joe and Steven and everyone at the Pig and Duke for supporting the podcast. And we would like to encourage anyone who is in Calgary this upcoming weekend to go and support them as they celebrate 10 years as a pub here in Calgary on March 11th and 12th. You can go to the 4th Ave location on this Friday, March 11th, as they celebrate there, or you can go on Saturday, March 12th, to the 12th Ave location, which is their original location. It's now going to be 10 years since that place opened, and I cannot believe it, because I still remember going and watching a Liverpool game versus, I believe it was Liverpool versus Arsenal, and then I came back later on that day to watch the Pavel Bure jersey retirement night. So please go support the Pig and Duke and support them as they celebrate 10 years, their 10th anniversary.
Awesome. So keep an eye out for that. And of course, we're doing this here. Joshua, thank you again. But how do we follow everyone?
I am BeardyConnect03 on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter at TNoble, TNOBLE.
And you can follow me at Joshua Griffith 0.
And follow Devin Gordhouse09, Christian Schneid's SCHNEIDZ. I am KEVOLE, Shifts and Pucks on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, on the Area of 51 Sports Network, and as well as subscribe wherever you get your audio podcasts. Thanks everyone for watching, and we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.